Welcome everyone who's tuning in to our Edulastic live presentation today. My name is Ileana Betancourt. I work at Edulastic, and I'm really thrilled to be here with Katie Breitholtz, who's an EL specialist in Illinois at Parkland School. And she works with middle school students with special needs or who are English learners. So she does a lot of digital assessment differentiation to accommodate for those learners, which is really cool. So we're thrilled to have her on as a guest today and talk to her about what she does and how she does it. So I'll just give you a moment to say hi, Katie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Breitholtz, as Ileana said. So my official title is an EL learning specialist. So this is my first year in special education. Before I was just a bilingual teacher, and now I've become bilingual, and I have a special ed attachment now with that. So part of my day I work with students with special needs, and then the other part I work with students who are newcomers, meaning they're recent arrivals from other countries. So that's kind of like.
Cool. And how did you get into that field of education?
I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. I just didn't know what I wanted to teach, because when I went to school, I didn't go to school with a very diverse group of kids, so I didn't really know what I liked, and kind of didn't have the confidence to think of like myself as like a language arts teacher or a math teacher, so I didn't really know. And then, so I went through college as a Spanish major in international studies and kind of focused on the language aspect. I studied abroad a couple times in college, and then afterwards I had made a goal to myself that I was going to absolutely get myself back to Spain after I did all those study abroads during college and do something else like a teach abroad. Or so after college I did a teach abroad, because I made that goal for myself. I'm like, I'm going to get back there. And that's when I actually started working with students who were learning English, and I couldn't have been happier. And I'm like, okay, I have to go home. I have to go back and get my master's and get my teaching degree, and I have to do this. Like, this is it. And so that's kind of how I fell into this position, and I couldn't be happier.
That's awesome. And I remember from when you filled out the Sunday Spotlight form last year, you had mentioned that you knew you wanted to be a teacher since kindergarten. Is that something that your kindergarten self would be proud of?
Oh, totally. And I think the other kindergarten self of me that wanted me to be a bus driver would be like way better choice to be a teacher than a bus driver.
That's good. I'm glad you were able to pursue that. Okay, and so also, where did you go abroad, and did that help make your decision on what you ultimately wanted to do?
I studied in Spain both times during college, and I fell in love with the country. It was amazing. I mean, I literally could not stay away. And I was there probably, 4 different times in a span of like 5 years. So my parents were like, okay, you need to stop. But yeah, I think that really did impact my my decision. And I knew, like, after working with kids who were learning English, I was so happy. I was like tutoring all these kids, and I just loved it. It was like, I knew that was for me. So
that's awesome. That's really great to be able to know that and feel good about it. So what do you love most about your work with these students?
So the struggle is real every day. So when you get those moments where the kids are like, oh my gosh, I get it. Those are the moments that you just totally live for, that you're like, oh my God, all those days that I'm racking my brain of how can I get this to you? How can I make this something you understand? Like English, Spanish, however I can get it to you, like just making that happen. Like, those are the moments you're just like, oh, I did it. We got there together. So just makes everything worthwhile. And even those moments when you connect with the kids, like outside of class, when they have nothing academic related, and you just, like, you see the kids outside of school and they're so excited to see you. It's like, that's what you love, like that kid connection. So
that's awesome. So of course, each student that comes to you is coming from different backgrounds and maybe has different needs. Is that something that is providing differentiated learning something that you're trained for? Is it something that you get there and you just realize this is what needs to happen and put it in place?
I'd like to say that your classes always prepare you for that, and like being on the job and like knowing how to differentiate. I I feel like my classes, like my education classes, prepared me to a certain extent, because my focus was working with students with English that were learning English. So I and drilled in my head that you have to make sure that you've got your assessment for your students who are, the lowest level for proficiency, and your your kids that are intermediate, and then your advanced students. So I kind of already had that idea in my brain of always having to differentiate for language. But then getting into the classroom, it was, let's differentiate now for, learning disabilities, and how can I make sure that I'm accommodating that in addition to language, and maybe simplifying what I'm doing or what the other kids are doing to make sure that that kid really does get it. Mm-hmm. So I think in a sense, my classes really did prepare me. But ultimately, I mean, when you're on the job and you get to know the kids, I think that's when it really happens and you really kind of understand the whole process.
Mm-hmm. So what is differentiation to you, and how are you applying that to work with your students the best way possible?
So a lot of what I'm doing is taking the content area curriculum that all the kids are getting and making it approachable and comprehensible linguistically. So maybe reducing the reading level a little bit and putting it into more simplified English. And then maybe, for those kids who are still lower readers and really struggle, even if you have brought down the reading level, giving them text to speech and having them hear it in addition to seeing it in front of them. And then doing, a lot of practice, like, giving a little bit of practice at one point for one kid, but then, you have another one who's ready for, to do more than that. So you give them a little bit more advanced to, and trying to get them to that grade level work that's, the same reading level or, comprehension questions kids would see. And so, like, you have to just kind of work that angle, I guess, of, I always think of language arts because that's like where my passion is a lot of with the language. So I just think of, like, you can give 3 different passages to your students at 3 different levels, and they can have relatively similar questions that you're looking for, but you're just going to get a little different answer, whether that's going to be a multiple choice or a written response. It just depends on the student and their abilities.
Right. And so you're talking about read aloud. That's kind of dipping into digital assessment. How long have you been using digital assessment for, and how did you decide that it was something that would help you when you're working with your students?
Well, Park is kind of to blame for me getting into digital assessments, but I'm actually really happy that it kind of happened that way. I was looking for something to help prepare my students for Park, and was scouring the internet and found Edulastic, so it was like, ha ha ha, yay! And then it kind of turned into this, wow, I spend a whole lot less time grading. Wow, I get these really cool reports. And so it just turned into, like, I started using it and found that it just made me more accessible to the kids. I got to see kind of a little bit of, like, light into their thinking as they're, like, working, because I could see their progress as they were going. And so digital assessments kind of went from, like, this one state test to I could use this regularly. And it just kind of found its way into the classroom very naturally. And I got really good feedback from the kids. And if they didn't like it, I was going to be like, oh, okay, we won't do it. But they really liked it, and they liked how they got feedback right away, and that we could kind of work through some of the struggles, like, right away in that moment. And I could, capitalize on that opportunity with them when they're thinking, I'm not really sure I'm kind of stuck on this problem, Mrs. B. And I could see they were sitting there for a really long time. And I was able to just kind of intervene, and I really like that. So digital assessments kind of naturally, found their way into my room, and they're not going anywhere now.
Cool. And so how does that help you make accommodations for your students?
So no longer do I have to sit and make 3 copies or 2 copies of the same test, and have to, like, completely rewrite things, or have to worry about like reading aloud questions to a kid, or making sure this get, like, making a really ugly format of something or whatever. So I feel like I can do a lot of what I couldn't do on paper and pencil with digital assessments. Like, I can actually test listening skills now. Like, can the kids listen to something and actually, figure out, answer the questions based on, like, an audio, clip, or they can watch a video and answer a question, where you do it with a paper and pencil.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really nice just because it makes it easier. There's less paper you're taking home. And of course, with winter, it's less germs. You don't have to worry so much about maybe getting whatever they have. So, I mean, it makes it so much easier. Like, you don't have to carry around 3 answer keys, and I feel like differentiation is so much easier. You make a copy of the same thing you just did, and then you make your adjustments in there, and it's way faster. So less time having to put all that together.
That's awesome. And you're able to kind of organize things pretty easily online, or what tools do you use to keep it organized?
Yeah, so with Edulastic, they came out with folders this year, as you know, and so I think with the folders, it's made it easier for me to kind of keep things in check there. I managed to kind of get through both of the assessments if I have 2 assessments up at the same time, and it kind of helps. I also use, in conjunction with that, we just got this thing called Go Guardian, so I can see what the kids are doing, so I can kind of see where they're at the same time if I can't click between the 2 assessments fast enough, which helps. Also, I can manage what they're doing because I know that was something we had talked about with Edulastic. How do you know if kids are using other things? But yeah, clicking between the 2 is very easy, and I'm getting better with that. I think that's just something every teacher has to find their groove.
Mm-hmm.
But it is relatively easy.
Cool. You said the students are very receptive to it. What do they like most about it, or do they feel is most tangibly beneficial to them?
Oh, well, they love the immediate feedback. I know that. They like that they know exactly how they did, and they can, they come up to me and they all show me. I'm like, you guys know I can actually see that, right? They're like, oh, okay. But they still come up and they're like, look what I got. And I'm like, oh, okay. And some of the kids are super excited, and then the other kids are like, oh my gosh, I didn't like that. I want to do it over. Please send it back to me. And so, I can do that right away, especially if it's an assignment that we're working on in class and they're practicing. So I'm like, okay, take it back. Let's make our corrections. Let's try it again. And so it really helps, especially with students with disabilities, having that extra practice. So immediate feedback's amazing. I think they also like that I will encourage them at moments. Like today, my kids are taking an assessment, and I looked over at the one kid and I was like, hey, I see you're doing really well. Keep it up, bud. And so I think him knowing that he was doing well was like, oh, I can do this. And because he went in a little skeptical and nervous. So I think it does kind of change the classroom a little bit, and the kids know that, I can communicate to them, at least if they're doing well, or hey, make sure we're slowing down on this question. So I kind of use some of the tools I have with the, real-time data to help them. Mm-hmm. And then for me, it's just, it's really nice.
This is reminding me of something you were saying when we were chatting the other day about your philosophy on mistakes and how you handle when the students kind of stumbles over something or when they're struggling. Can you talk a bit more about your philosophy there and how you work with students?
I always like the kids to make corrections on everything. I encourage them to always learn from their mistakes. And so I use that with Edulastic a lot. The redirect tool is one of my favorite things to use, just because I can send it back to the kids, and I feel like they have a sense of accomplishment when they can go back and fix that mistake. And there's just this culture that we've created in the room of it's okay if we make mistakes. We just need to learn from them. And so I am able to, like I had said before, I can see when a kid is struggling, and I can pull them over and I can say, hey, let's go through this. Let's, let's check out this question. Where are we struggling? So I feel like it helps the kids a little bit too, to know, I don't have to sit and suffer in silence maybe than they were before, and just kind of take a guess and not feel good about it. Whereas, I have that opportunity, and, it's creating that environment where it's okay to make mistakes, but it's, let's learn from it. So trying to create that growth mindset, with them.
That's awesome. Yeah, that encouragement is really strong. A lot of studies and research have shown that when you make a mistake, if you correct it immediately and you work through the problem, it's going to stick with you as you move forward. So that's awesome.
Oh my gosh. And that's a huge thing, especially with students with disabilities, having that opportunity, not waiting for 3 days to get an assessment back and getting that feedback more, more immediately than you would have before. You learn more. They're learning from that. in the moment and not 3 days later when they can't remember what they were doing or their thought process. So.
Right. That's awesome. The I think I can idea, like they can do it. They just gotta maybe need a little boost sometimes. So when you are, I know that for some people, like the idea of creating a digital assessment, maybe for those who are a little less tech savvy, might seem kind of difficult or hard. What is your workflow when you kind of have, when you have the content you need and you need to make an assessment and then give it to students? Like how do you do that, and how long does it usually take you?
Well, in the beginning, it took me a little bit longer because I didn't always know like how I wanted to do something or what I wanted to, like maybe I'd sit down and be like, okay, I think I'm going to put together this assessment and I think I'm going to do this. And I definitely rely on some of the questions from the library that are in there already. That question bank is enormous. And so I'll pull questions from there and I maybe will adapt them accordingly to like my students with the differentiation, whether that be linguistically or maybe adding visuals or something to help them. But I can now get assessments down like a half an hour and be done. And even less than that if I'm, like not quite so like, okay, I'm going to go to the standard. I'm going to pick, at least I know what I want and I can get an assessment done in 5 minutes. So because there's so many questions there that I can literally just flow through all of that very easily. And sorry about that. I think it's just in the beginning getting used to like knowing what you want to ask. And I do look to the library because so many people have created questions and you can pull from them and get ideas and, oh, I really wanted to ask a question like this. But somebody created one like this, but oh, I like that. And you kind of like pick and choose and make your own almost too. So like, it's really nice. And I like how you can, start from scratch, but you can pull in from other people and it makes it really easy. And that flow from, really being all on you to type all those questions or write everything out and put in all those pictures or whatever. It used to be a whole lot more difficult than I feel like it is now. Like you can, click and drop things in there and it's pretty easy.
That's great. And then what do you do with your saved time? Because it sounds like it's really fast to make an assessment and then you're getting it auto-graded.
Yeah, it's amazing. I definitely use it just because it makes it so much easier to like know how the kids are doing and you can then adjust your planning accordingly. So like I saw my kids were still struggling with multiplying decimals the other day. And so I was like, okay, holding off our assessment. We're not quite there yet. Let's do some more guided practice. Gave them the same assignment again and they retried it. And I was like, okay, I think we're ready now. So because because you can download the responses or you can go back and do question analysis, it makes it so much easier then to plan accordingly and know what to look for specifically for your kids. Like, okay, I definitely know we need to talk about multiplication and they're really not getting that. They need to move the decimal over so many places. Or I understand that my kids are, they need more work on main idea and finding main idea. So you can find that targeted practice and you can get that, and get that in their hands. And so with the auto grading and, using the reports that are given in Edulastic, you can, make that part much simpler in your life and then spend the rest of the time planning and worrying about the kids. So it's great.
Cool. And so about how many students do you work with? And when you have a given assessment or unit, how many different versions or adjustments, like how many different versions are you making to accommodate for your group of students that you're working with?
So I have about 6 or 7 kids, I guess anywhere from 5 to 7 kids in my small instructional classes. And so I will make typically 2 different versions because I have students reading at one grade level and maybe reading at a totally different grade level. So I will give different assessments that way or different assignments that way, just to see how they're doing. And then, but like in math, I have to give 3 different versions of it because I have a student who's a non-reader. So I have to make sure that he's got, the Spanish part in there and he's got his questions that are totally separate, which is more of like the personalized learning we've talked a little bit about the other day. And so he has like kind of his own thing that he's doing, but the other group has like two separate tests so that they can work on those at their levels, because some of the kids are just more advanced and need more practice. So
cool. And then how do you like measure success with your students, and how, like, what are your goals for the year usually? I guess you have Park that you prepare for.
Yeah, which actually apparently they just changed the name for that. I don't know, in Illinois, we now have like, I think they called it like the Illinois Readiness Assessment or something.
Oh, interesting.
This is like brand new, hot off the press, like last week. So I'm going to be quite honest, and this is probably not something I should really admit to this many people, but I don't teach to the test. I don't like focus just on Park. I focus on skills, and I focus on what my kids need to know how to be able to do to be successful, like in the classroom, and to be successful like readers, being able to do, you know, their math. And so like I don't really focus on tests, but I use Edulastic as my tool to help them like reach all those goals. So I don't know what I'd say my goal for the year is, but I guess maybe just having my students make progress and know that they are continuing to advance their education, and that I've helped shape them in that way, whether that be improving their English skills, their math skills, their, you know, reading skills, anything that is going to make them better.
That's awesome.
That's my goal always. I feel like I don't know of any teacher who doesn't really have that goal for themselves. They always want their students to make progress. So
that's good. That's great.
Kind of what I am.
Yeah, I mean, you're accommodating and you're trying to support them in the ways that they need. So it's something where you see them grow. That's great. And then what do you recommend to teachers who are either finding themselves in a new situation where they need to accommodate for different students, or who maybe are in your shoes and could do and are looking for tips for learning how to better differentiate or accommodate students?
I find that for me, like some of the ways that I've learned how to differentiate a little bit better is just kind of seeing what other people do. Like lean on the people who are around you that maybe are your experts. And if you don't feel like you have people around you that are experts, then, you know, there are people everywhere. I mean, you can go to the internet. If you're looking for like Edulastic specific ideas, I literally rely on the question bank of like ideas and through things to see like, oh, hey, that's a great way. I think that could really work for the student. Or, you know, just other people have come up with so many different ways of doing the same thing maybe you've thought about doing. And so, you know, borrow and steal, right? That's what they tell you when you're student teaching, you know? But I feel like you just have to like lean on the people around you and go to the people who are experts that can help guide you.
I like that idea of crowdsourcing, because there's so many creative people out there. You can really take a look, and it sounds like you're getting inspiration from that. And do you work with a team of teachers, or are you like, what's the structure of your support and where you pull from?
I'm super lucky because I have two teams that I kind of go to, because I have like my EL team, my bilingual people that I go to for, you know, ideas and for help and any problem solving things. I go to them. I also have my special ed people that I go to, because with being new to special ed, I'm like, oh God, I don't know this, help me. And so I feel like I have a lot of people I can ask anything I need to, and they're there to support me in any way that I feel like I need. So I'm very, very fortunate.
Cool, that's great. And then I also just want to take a moment to say, if anyone's who's tuned in has a question, feel free to enter that in the Facebook chat, and I will relay that on to Katie. Or if you have any follow-up questions, you can connect with her on Twitter at KT Breitholtz, I believe. Is that your Twitter handle?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay. We'll share it on the Facebook comments after, so you can go connect with her afterwards, or reach out to her directly if you have a question. Okay, so then next question is, I know from the Sunday Spotlight interview last year, which was awesome, everyone should check it out, that you have flexible seating in your classroom. So I'm wondering, in addition to all these other things that you're doing, how do you think that helps set the tone that you're looking for in your classroom? How does that make your students feel?
Well, I think that the flexible seating makes my room super inviting. I get kids from like all over the school that I walk by my room and they're like, oh, I want to be in this room. And I'm like, oh, that makes me really happy to hear, because middle schoolers don't always want to be in their classroom. So I think creating a warm environment, like inviting environment for the kids is super important. And my biggest thing is lowering the affective filter, making the kids not feel anxious when they come into school. And if I can do that by making their seating different, that is amazing. Flexible seating for me kind of started out as a necessity just because I had so many kids in such a small space that I didn't have, I couldn't fit just like regular desks in there or tables in there. And so it just kind of like organically happened for me, but I can't get rid of it now because I just like it so much. And I get kids who come from their elementary schools and they had the same thing and they're like, this is the best ever. And so I think that continuity also helps, like especially with that middle school transition.
Yeah, that's awesome. There are some pictures from that interview that are on the website, and it looks like a nice lounge, so I can definitely see how that's inviting and relaxing to students who are sitting at their desks all day or running around the classes, whatever they're doing. Cool. All right, and then is there anything else that any other teaching secrets or ideas or thoughts that you think the world should know?
I don't know. I have a new teacher on my team, and I tell him, I'm like, start small. Always start small.
Yeah.
And simple. Like, and that's kind of, and I actually had shared with him about Edulastic. I was like, oh my gosh, you should totally try this. Like, it's amazing. It will change your life and change your teaching. And like, even though you're just starting. But, and I told him the same thing, like, just start simple, start small, like, don't overwhelm yourself, take one thing at a time. And so I think that is a key. And I tell myself that all the time. And I take that advice regularly when it's like, I'm overwhelmed with progress monitoring. One thing at a time, one student at a time, and it'll get done. It may not be done the same day you want it to, but it'll get done.
That's a really great piece of feedback. And for anyone who is just starting with digital assessment or differentiating your assessments or kind of revamping your whole process of evaluating students where they are and how you need to adjust your instruction, that's a great tip for all of those things. Is take it easy, don't get overwhelmed, and take a deep breath if you do. It was really great last year. Katie was at ISTE with a couple other teachers who use Edulastic, talking about how they work with their students and do digital assessment. And hopefully that'll, we'll all be able to meet in person again this upcoming year. But just wanted to make note of that too. Cool. I think that's all the questions I have for you. Well, what do you like to do for fun? I'll throw that out there too.
I love running. That's like one of my favorite things to do, and it helps. It's a good thing to help relieve stress when you feel overwhelmed, that take one thing at a time. Cool. Yeah. Otherwise, I love just spending time with my kids and my family. So it's just nice.
That's nice. Awesome. Well, I think that wraps up our conversation today. Thanks so much for being a part of our Edulastic Live series and sharing your story with us and talking about this really cool thing that you're doing through accommodating your students. Again, if anyone has any questions or wants to reach out to Katie, she's on Twitter, and we'll share that link in the chat. Otherwise, have a great rest of your Thursday, and hope to see you next week. We're having a chat on differentiated instruction next week at this time. I should point that out. So hopefully we'll see you all there to connect with others who are interested in that topic and share some strategies and skills and tools and all that. So join us next week for that, and hope everyone has a great rest of the Thursday.